Well, here we go with your Phil Steele Plus tour for week 4. We've got 5 selections for you today. We're going to cover the broad scope of games. We'll give you FBS games, FCS games, which of course have done very well out here throughout the 3 years of the Phil Steele Plus tour, NFL games, and basically, besides the free selections, the main thing of this tour is to get you to utilize Phil Steele Plus to its fullest. Know everything that's on there. Know the things you can click on and get the latest access to. You know, one couple things I want to start. Well, let's start. Let's jump right into it with the selection. I've got them right here on the page. As you know, I like to match them up, and I like to put the team on the right is the home team. The team on the left is the visiting team. Let's look at selection number 1. Now, Miami of Florida is hosting Florida State. And in that game this week, Miami is an 11-point favorite. So let's dive into this game a little bit deeper. It's the big game of the week, the big rivalry game, the one that's on TV on ABC, I believe it is. And we'll take a look. Now, so far this year, naturally, Miami has been very impressive. You guys know from the magazine, Miami is my number 1 most improved team in the country. A big reason for them being my number 1 most improved team is this guy right here, D'Eriq King. You know, if you go back to Houston 2 years ago, let's go to the American Conference, look at Houston, and we're going to take a look here at 19. Here's 2018 stats. D'Eriq King ran for 676 yards, 14 touchdowns. He hit 63% of his passes, 36 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. So that's 36 and 14. That's 50 touchdowns he accounted for, and in an exciting way at Houston. And naturally, as I go back here to Houston, well, we could do it on Miami here. Let's go back to Miami. On Miami, on the team page, when you're on philsteele.com, Phil Steele Plus, I should say, you see the individual leaders, you see the stats, color-coded red and green. So you can see Louisville did move the ball last week. There's some red on this page for Miami. Most of the numbers here, though, are green. But this is like that for 2019. How about 2018, 2017? 2016, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. That's all at your fingertips. All that access for you. And the individual player stats. You want to go back to 2015, look at a game by game, see how any of the players did. It's all there. It's more relevant for the current ones, but the research here is amazing. We do the research anyway. It's there. You could take a look at the quarterback play last year for Miami. They did have one good game. It came against Florida State. And here, Jaron Williams had 2 touchdown passes in that game, threw for 313 yards. But overall, their quarterback struggled during the course of the year. We've seen improved play this year, though, with D'Eriq King. He's hitting 62%, got a 4.0 ratio. Also ran for 92 yards. Now, if you click on individual stats, you see it in the first game, D'Eriq King ran for 83 yards. Now, my boy Todd will get the Louisville individual stats logged in there. They'll be up there by the time you see this video. And you'll see that he didn't run the ball as much this past week, but he did the first week, did not so much the second week, and they didn't need him to. They put the points on the board, 485 yards. And if you want to see how the game was played, you see all the half times are right here. They led the game 20-6 at the half. And here, when you click on box score, this gives you the complete game book. I like to thank collegepressbox.com for this complete game book that they give us for each game. There's your stats. There's your individual stats on the page. You can click down here. There's your defensive stats. Those are who started in the game. There's your drive chart for the game. Here is your individual play-by-play for the game. That's going to be available on every game. Thank you, collegepressbox.com. Really appreciate you providing that for our site this year. So if you click on box score here, you've got the complete game book for every game. That's phenomenal. If you click on, this is this year's game. Let's click on this Florida State. Here's the last 23 years matchups with Florida State. Now look at all this red out here. This is one thing we're going to go against this week. This tells you at a glance, you can see that the home team has not done very well. Miami's the home team. So the visitor is doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 2 against the spread. And here's how it works. If it's got the word win or loss, that's what they did in the game. So you can see there's a lot of losses in here. The visitor's winning outright. But the red and green is against the spread. So you can see that the visitor has only lost twice against the spread recently. Now, that would lean with Florida State. These numbers out here show that Miami's won the last 3 games. They've won them by 4. They won them by 1. Last year they won 27-10. This over here tells you whether they covered the game. As you could tell, the favorite, or I should say the underdog, has done well in this series. Almost all these covers by the underdog. So the underdog's done well, the visitors done well, but I'm going against that this week. With Miami, my number one most improved team in the country, you got a team that's got a dominant defensive line. Now, Louisville, as mentioned, did put some yards up on them, but Louisville's got some tremendous playmakers across the board. Meanwhile, Florida State, the one area they struggle in is offensive line. Go back to last year. They gave up 48 sacks on the season. They only averaged 3.8 yards per carry. Let me ask you a question. How can you only average 3.8 yards per carry when you got Cam Akers in the backfield averaging 5 yards per carry? That shows you a little bit about this offensive line and how they struggle. Now, in the opener, they took on a Georgia Tech defensive line that's not a sack monster. They still had 3 sacks. They only averaged 3.1 yards per carry. They're taking on Miami of Florida defensive line that I rate the 3rd best defensive line in the country. So that's a very good defensive line against a weaker offensive line. You know, Florida State only had 307 yards against Georgia Tech. That concerns me. They gave up 438. And if you give up 438 to Georgia Tech, you're going to give them some yards to this potent offense of Miami. Cam Harris has been dynamic at running back, averaging 10.3 yards per carry. Miami, they played a very good UAB team, and they played a ranked Louisville team, and yet they're averaging 6.1 yards per carry. I got to like that as well. So this is a Miami team that I have as the number one most improved team in the country. Last year when they played Florida State, we go back over here and take a look at the box score for this game. Here it is right here. And there it is. You can see that Miami led this thing 17-3 at the half and won it 27-10. And at the half of that game, Miami had a 206 to 88 yard edge. I love these halftimes. It really gives you a good picture of how the game was played. So do utilize the halftimes, which are right here. And I personally log in the halftime of every game. When I'm watching the games, I'm writing down all the halftimes so we get the latest halftimes. If for any chance we miss it, we just go to collegepressbox.com. They got all the stuff for you, halftimes. I mean, you go down here, you go through the stats. There's the end of the second quarter stats right there, collegepressbox.com. So love those guys there. But anyway, back to this game. You've got Miami with the better team. And going back to halftimes for 1 minute, once again, just trying to show you the site. If you look here, you have got every spread record since 1976. That's every team that's been playing since 76. And look at this. We even give you the totals. They started putting totals on every game in 2003. We've got totals for every game. And then how about the halftimes? You've got the halftime score of every game since 2004. All this information, which I need. If I want to look up a halftime scores in 2011 on a matchup, I can go back and look at it. This is all information that I do for myself. Look at the head coaches here. You could tell that Larry Coker was the head coach after Butch Davis. He went 12-0, 12-1, 11-2, then started dropping off. They said, hey, let's bring in Randy Shannon. Wasn't a great thing. Al Golden came in. Mark Richt came in. They've had some good years, but only the double-digit years have been few and far between. Since 2003, Miami's had one double-digit win season. 2017 under Mark Richt. They were my number one most improved team and almost made the playoff that year. So all this information at your fingertips. You want to know how they did in ACC play, what they did yardage-wise in ACC play for the season stats. It's all available at your fingertips. Just click on right here, last 40 years results for those. So that's all these information is on these pages, individual player stats every game. But add it all up. I just think Miami's a better team. They're only laying 11. If it wasn't the Miami-Florida State game, which is a rivalry game, and the underdog's done well and the visitors done well, this line would probably be 17. But due to the mystique of Florida State, yeah, they've got good players. I just don't like the fact they were outgained by 131 yards by Georgia Tech. And Miami's been living up to my potential, taking on two really good teams and beating them by 17 and 13 points. So I'm taking Miami. I'm laying the 11. That is selection number 1. All right, last week I gave you a sneaky fantasy football player, and he delivered. I said nobody really knows anything too much about the quarterback, and for I'm trying to think what game that was. He threw for 300 yards last week. Oh, Phil Jerkovic of Boston College. But I said Duke would sell out to try to stop the run. Jerkovic would have a big game. How about 300 yards passing for Phil Jerkovic? Well, today I'm going to really go deep dive. We're going for a player that hasn't done anything, but I expect him to have a good game. We're going to look at Louisiana this week. And Louisiana last year had a three-headed monster running back. Elijah Mitchell, Raymond Calais, Trey Regis. Look at these yards. 1,100, 800, 800. Now, two of these guys are back this year. Chris Smith is just a distant number 4, 27 carries, 291 yards. But how about 10.8 yards per carry? And here's the thing about Chris Smith. When I'm talking to Coach Napier last year, he said Chris Smith would start for a lot of teams, but he's just buried in the backfield behind Mitchell, Calais, and Regis. Well, now we go to this year. Mitchell and Regis are your top two guys, as you would expect. Chris Smith only has 17 carries for 51 yards, 3 yards a carry. But he's probably the most explosive running back out of the backfield, along with Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell is going to miss this week's game. So a lot of folks are going to say, hey, Trey Regis is the man. As well you should. But I think Chris Smith is your sneaky guy this week. He's got the most explosiveness out of the backfield. Regis is your power guy. Smith is your speed guy. Smith had one big kick return already this year. And I think he's going to surprise everyone. 51 yards on the year. I'm looking for a 100-plus yard game out of Chris Smith. Maybe a couple of touchdowns this week. He's my sneaky fantasy football player of the week. All right, let's take a look at one more FBS game before we head to the FCS. And we're going to take a look at Southern Miss against Tulane. Big matchup here in Southern Miss is in CUSA, and they're at home for this game. And Tulane is, of course, in the American Conference, and they are on the road. Now, these two teams both played South Alabama. If you look at Southern Miss against South Alabama, they lost that game 32-21. Tulane played South Alabama and came back and won it 27-24. But if you go down and look at the play-by-play of the game on here, once again, thank you, collegepressbox.com, for this great stuff. You go down the end of the first quarter, I believe it was in the third quarter of this game, we would find that Tulane was actually trailing South Alabama 24-6. There's 14-6. Let's see if we can find that 24-6 here. 24-6 South Alabama. Tulane had a rally for the win there. So both teams struggled against South Alabama. Tulane had the big lead against Navy. Look at the halftime. 24-0, 291, 59-yard edge. But they lost 27-24 in that game. Navy had 350 yards for the game. That means in the second half, Navy had 291 yards in the second half to get to 350, so they controlled the second half of that game. Now, the thing with Tulane is in last year's bowl game, I'm watching this thing, and I leaned with Southern Miss in press box, and I felt pretty good at the half. Let's take a look at the halftime. At the half of this game, the score is 13-6 Southern Miss. And as you can tell right here by the yards, Southern Miss has 199 to 74-yard edge. So I felt pretty good. But on the last play of the half, Abraham takes off on a run. And when I say Abraham, I'm talking about Southern Miss's quarterback, Jack Abraham, who hit 68% last year with a 19-15 ratio. And Abraham injures his shoulder at that point. And guess what? He's out for the rest of the game. And Tulane dominates the second half. They win the game 30-13. So if you just look at the final score, you say Tulane went out and dominated Southern Miss in last year's bowl game. Not really the case. Southern Miss had a 199, 74-yard edge at the half. Struggled to throw the football in the second half. Let's see, we got the individual stats here. You can see that Tate Watley came in, hit 9-22, had 2 interceptions. Meanwhile, Jack Abraham had been hitting 17-23 for 167. And that really was the turning point of the game. Now, I mentioned that because in last year's game, if we look at the individual stats for Tulane, Tulane had Justin McMillan, he's over here, the LSU transfer, hit 13-18 for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's gone. McMillan at 41 yards rushing, he's gone. Top 2 rushers for Tulane at the running back spot, which are Dauphine and Bradwell, they're gone. Top 3 receivers for Tulane last year, Mooney, McCleskey, Jones, they're all gone. So Tulane's biggest offensive weapons from that bowl win last year are all gone. Meanwhile, Southern Miss has got back Jack Abraham this year. So he's back, ready to play. And they, after that slow start to South Alabama, they actually led. If you go back to their game last week against Louisiana Tech, I gave out Louisiana Tech last week right here on the Phil Steele Plus tour. And I got to admit, I felt good in the first half. I thought Louisiana Tech played well. Then all of a sudden, Southern Miss, once again, we're going to zip down here, look at how the scores of the game went, which I find this invaluable. And this will be updated right here, right where it says box score. Just click on that each week, and you'll have that updated. You see 20-10, 27-10. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going to win that play. Then Louisiana Tech battled back, 27-17, 27-24. And then at the end of the game, it was really remarkable. Louisiana Tech throws a pass right here, the last play of the game. Luke throws to Herbert. And watching it live, I thought the ball was out of bounds. I thought he got pushed out of bounds. It was ruled out of bounds. And that's it, because it was fourth and goal at the 4-yard line. But on replay, it clearly shows Herbert got his foot down. Touchdown for Louisiana Tech. They pull out a 31-30 win. So not a bad game for Southern Miss. Southern Miss impressed me last week because they could easily have beaten Louisiana Tech. We got one here on Phil Steele Plus. We got a nice little win with Louisiana Tech. They were plus 5.5, unfortunately, trailing by 6, but they won by that point and got the victory for us. So Southern Miss was good last week. They have an interim head coach, got the team fired up. Probably should have won the bowl game last year had their quarterback not got injured. Their quarterback's back. Their quarterback, top 2 running backs, top 3 receivers all gone. Add it all up. Looking at this information, Southern Miss is plus 23 or plus 3.5, I should say, plus 3.5 at home. They're 21-10 straight up at home. Could easily be 22-9 straight up at home. Add it all up. I'm going to take the home underdog here. Southern Miss plus 3.5 over Tulane. Lock it in. So far we got 2 selections. Miami minus 11 over Florida State. Southern Miss plus 3.5 over Tulane. And hopefully I've showed you the best way to navigate these Phil Steele Plus FBS pages so you can use them to your fullest. Now let's go to the FCS, and you click right here on FCS team pages. And there we go, and they're in alphabetical order. And the first matchup we're going to take a look at this week is the Citadel against Eastern Kentucky. So we're going to put Eastern Kentucky on the left because they're the visitor. There they are. And we are going to put the Citadel, and it's the Citadel. So you might think of looking under C, but it's the Citadel. And by the way, guys, when FCS football hits this spring, you're going to want FCS information because you're going to be watching these games on TV. You're going to want to play these games on TV. Let me show you a little something on these FCS pages. Here's the Citadel. Here's your 2020 individual leaders, right? How about 2019 statistical leaders? And broken down game by game. You got to love that. Every FCS team broken down game by game last year, this year. You could go back and look at 2018, 2017, color-coded. You could tell that the Citadel is an option team, can't you? Look at the red numbers here. Look at the very few rush or pass attempts. Look at the rush numbers. You could tell they run the option and have run the option. Look at all those green numbers there running the football. You can click back and look at anything since 2011. You'll have individual stats the last 2 years, and they'll be updated weekly for you during the season. So keep that in mind. You'll want the FCS coverage for FCS football. Now, the Citadel's 0-2, but their quarterback last year was Brandon Rainey. He's back. He was their leading rusher last year, leading passer. Many times that happens in the option. This year, he's only got 57 yards rushing. I think that's going to improve. But so far, they've played South Florida, and they have played Clemson. This just in, Clemson's a pretty good team. You know, one thing I really like about their head coach last week, they asked him at the half of the Citadel or of the Clemson game. I think it was 42-0. They said, "Coach, you want to shorten it?" And he said, "No, we're playing a full game." I like that attitude. Like that a lot. Now, in the opener against USF, I watched that one. They had 3 drives inside USF territory. They settled for a field goal, and they got stopped on downs. South Florida had 1 drive inside their territory and got a touchdown. Somehow they're losing the game 7-6, despite outplaying USF. USF got a late touchdown, actually won by 21. But I was impressed with the Citadel in both their games this year. And Eastern Kentucky, they have their quarterback back, but Parker McKinley last year, 52% with a 7-9 ratio. So far this year, he's upped it to 59%, but still a 1-2 ratio. Alonzo Booth, they call him the bus. He looks like Jerome Bettis out there. You'd think he'd have a lot of yards, but he's only got 78 yards rushing. Now, granted, they've played Marshall and West Virginia. They got shut out by Marshall 59-0, and then West Virginia, they scored 10 points. 7 first downs and 9 first downs so far this year in those 2 games. Now, the one thing that I really like on the Phil's book page, or on these pages here, the team pages, we even give you the average game grade, and we started this 3 years ago for the FCS games. And what this does, it takes into account the opponents you play, where you play them, and then not only what the final score was, but how you did statistically in the game. Well, so far this year, Eastern Kentucky is playing to a 48.8 average game grade. So you get this updated, you're going to love this. FCS football you're watching on TV this spring, you're going to want to have these stats right in front of you with these average game grades. Look at Citadel. They're 0-2, but look at their average game grades, 71.2 and 85.6. I mean, that's not a bad game against Clemson. Once again, they're playing to an average game grade of 78.4. So you got 78.4 against 48, and the game is at Citadel. Let's say you gave them just a 1.5 point. Let's make it a 1.6 home edge. Round that up to 80. 80 against 48.8 is 31.2. So that means Citadel by 31.2 using the average game grade. And the line's 10. So I like the Citadel, minus 10 over Eastern Kentucky. I've been impressed with both their games. Here's the other thing I want you to look at. And you see a lot of red here under East Kentucky. Look at what they've been allowing on the ground. 282, 329, 5.8 yards per carry. Did you know Eastern Kentucky lost? That's a different game. But Eastern Kentucky gave up 5.8 yards per carry on the ground so far this year, and they're taking on a Citadel team that's at its best when they can run the football. Another matchup I like here. So your third official play, we're going to take the Citadel, we're going to go minus 10, and we're going to go against Eastern Kentucky. All right, let's continue on with the FCS. We got another game for you, and this could be my FCS Press Box Game of the Week. And we're going to take a look at Central Arkansas against Missouri State. Now, Missouri State's a visitor, so we're going to put them on the left. Let's line up Missouri State. Click on them over here. There we go, Missouri State. You know, their head coach, it says here Dave Steckel, but their head coach is actually Bobby Petrino. He took over this year, first-year head coach. Todd will get that corrected by the time that you see this FCS. But Bobby Petrino is the head coach. Brought in Jaden Johnson, a big-time recruit. He was a PS 35. He struggled a little bit in the opener, but let's cut him some slack. They played Oklahoma. Now they're taking on Central Arkansas. And the line is 10 or 10.5 in this game. And here's the thing with Central Arkansas. Last year, this was a playoff team. So Central Arkansas went 7-2, 7-3, 8-3, 9-3, finally lost in the playoffs to Illinois State. But they are a playoff team. They've got their quarterback back in Braylon Smith, who had 64% with a 32-16 ratio last year. So far, they played Austin Peay, and they look good. Austin Peay was a playoff team last year. And against a playoff team from last year, they won by 7. But look at this. They had a 460 to 333-yard edge. Now, you guys watched UAB on TV last night, right? You know how high I am on UAB. Bill Clark does a tremendous job. He's got dominating defense. He's got dominating offense. They played UAB within 10 points. So that's not a bad game right there either. So they've played 2 pretty good games so far this season. Crosley and Myers are running the football well. Look at the YPC, 7.7, 6.0 yards per carry. So this is a pretty good Central Arkansas team. They look like a playoff team once again. If they were playing in the spring and available for the playoffs, I think Central Arkansas would make the playoff. Now let's look at Missouri State. Do you think Bobby Petrino can turn this team around in 1 year? I don't think so. I mean, he's got some players to work with, but look at last year. This team won 1 game. They are not a playoff team. They were 1-11 on the year. So far this year, they opened up losing 48-0. That game was 41-0 at the half, and then Oklahoma just coasted in the second half. They struggled to run the ball, naturally, struggled to pass it. Can't write too much into that because Oklahoma's a really good team. But basically, you have a playoff caliber team that beat a playoff team by 7 taking on a team that was 1-10 last year. Now, I said it was the press box game of the week, and we're going to click on, here's the write-up. I give you a full write-up on every game that's being played in press box, even FCS versus FCS. Here's your write-up, talks about Bobby Petrino, gives you everything you need to know about both teams over here. Here's my computer's projection on the game. It says Central Arkansas going to outrush them 123-107, outpass them 342-192, and have a projected yardage of 465-299, win the game 37-21. They're laying 10. I think they may win by more than the 16 points there, probably, but I like to look at my computer forecast. This is available on every game, college, pro, FCS, FBS, every game. You get my complete write-up on every game inside the press box. So my inside the press box FCS game of the week, we're going to take Central Arkansas -10 over Missouri State. And real quick, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but if you would like to get my weekly newsletter, it's got all that information on every game. It's $149 for the college, $149 for the NFL, and that's regular season. If you want the postseason, it's $89. If you want Phil Steele Plus, which is what you're seeing me give you a tour of right now, that's $69. The whole package, $456. Type in the code word Elite Member. You get $50 off. You get my newsletter from now through the Super Bowl for just $199. That's Elite Member will get you that discount. Or go at the top, if you just want college, type in football is back, and they'll give you $20 off any subscription. And all you have to do is go right here on philsteele.com. Just click on the Phil Steele store. And when you go to the store, you get a magazine. You get Inside the Press Box College. You get Inside the Press Box Bundle, which is NFL and college. The one I'm talking about, it tells you right here it's $249. But when you type in Elite Member as your code, it's $50 off. It's just $199. You can sign up for Phil Steele Plus for $69, or you get it free if you sign up to any of these Inside the Press Box. College and regular season only. Here, $149. Once again, you type in the code Football is Back and take $20 off that. So that makes it pretty easy to get in there. Join Inside the Press Box today and get those discounts on those. And let's wrap it up with an NFL game for you today. And we've got a complete NFL site for you. Let's take a look at NFL team pages. Got the logos going on there. That's a little personal favorite of mine. Growing up, I mean, I've been following football since I was 4, guys, so I've always been fascinated with the logos in the NFL, and that's why I like this team page to look like this. There's only 32 teams to follow. Let's throw the logos up there. But we're going to take a look at Minnesota, Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's a visitor, so I'm going to rack them up and put them on the left. And we're going to take Minnesota and we're going to put them on the right. Boy, what a disappointing start to the year for the Minnesota Vikings, huh? They've been blown out twice. They got beat by Green Bay by 9. They got blown out by Indianapolis by 17. Now they're a home underdog to Tennessee. And Tennessee, a powerful 2-0, right? Now let's dive a little bit deeper inside this. And we're going to take a look, first of all, let's look at who Minnesota's played. They've played Green Bay, a playoff team. They've played Indianapolis, a team that will be a playoff team this year. So that's not too bad. Taking on a couple of playoff teams. They have been outgained by 160 yards per game. Tennessee took on Denver, one of the weakest teams in the NFL, and Jacksonville, maybe the weakest team in the NFL. And let's see how they won those games. Against one of the weakest teams in the NFL, Denver, you look at the end of the game, Tennessee needs a field goal with 17 seconds left to pull out a 2-point win at Denver. And that's one of the weakest teams in the NFL. Jacksonville, who I regard as possibly the weakest team in the NFL, we saw them last night against Miami, by the way. Jacksonville is a team that they played, and guess what? Once again, a 49-yard field goal to win the game, 33-30. They win that game by 3, and that was at home. Now they're on the road against Minnesota. They're nice and happy at 2-0. Minnesota in an absolute must-win. And if we look at I've got these pages here in my NFL scorebook. We take a look at the Minnesota team page. Let's take them a little bit closer. Mike Zimmer is dynamic. I mean, you take a look at this guy. Let's take a look at his record off a straight-up loss. We give you these against the spread records, by the way, for every team in the Pro Football Scorebook. Also, these over-unders for every team in every situation. You got it all right here. So, Mike Zimmer off a loss. 4-0-1, 5-1, 2-1, 4-0, 5-0, 6-3. Mike Zimmer off a loss, 26-11-1. So you got to like that. How does he do as a home underdog? All right, let's take a look at that. 1-0, 1-1, 2-0, 2-0, 0-1, 2-1. Mike Zimmer is, or the Minnesota Vikings here, 4-1 and 3-0. The Vikings as a whole are 14-4 as a home underdog. How about versus non-division favorites, or versus non-division teams overall? Versus non-division at home, Mike Zimmer is 22-7-1. You could add all these numbers up here. Home favorite, home dog against non-division. Here's your line, which tells you where Mike Zimmer started. And 22-7-1. And now they're a great home team under Mike Zimmer that's desperate at home. Let's delve into Tennessee a little bit closer on this Tennessee right. And we see that, non-division away favorite. All right, they're playing non-division. They're away favorite. They are 2-1, 2-3, 2-3-1, 2-4-1, 2-4-1. And this year they played Denver. That makes them 2-5-1. They did not cover. They were laying 2.5 or 3 in that game and only won by 2. So 2-5-1 is a non-division away favorite. In fact, they only won against Denver by 2. And look who Tennessee's got on deck. They're 2-0. You know what? If I'm Tennessee, I'm thinking we got Pittsburgh on deck. That's a big game in the AFC. Huge game in the AFC. This is just Minnesota. It's on the road. It's a NFC game. This game is much more important against Pittsburgh. So the situation favors Minnesota. The strength of opponent favors Minnesota. The home field favors Minnesota. I know the NFL here on the Phil Steele Plus Tour has opened up 0-2 so far. Hoping we get it started with a nice 1-2 here. And one quick note, if you do want to get the workbook, I showed you where the store was and how to get there. These are the pages you get on all three, or on 3 full pages on every NFL team. You get every record against the spread since 2000. You get the same thing, the coaches over here. You get this year's lineup, the spread records, over-unders. This stuff over here you can get on Phil Steele Plus. But if you don't have Phil Steele Plus, you get this. And the scorebook, or the workbook, let me just see exactly what the price is on that. Go to the store for a second. Come on, store. There it is. All right, and here's your workbook, and the workbook is $20.25, but there's shipping involved, so it's not really $20.25. It comes out to, I think it's $28, including the shipping for the NFL workbook. That gets you those 3 full pages on each and every team. And one last thing I want to mention to you, and it involves college football. And guys, I know there were some folks that been hitting me up on Twitter this year, Big Ten fans, that said, you know what, Phil, it's the first time I'm not going to buy your magazine because Big Ten's not playing this year. And you got to feel there were Pac-12 teams that weren't playing. That's felt the way. Mountain West teams. I believe the MAC's going to start playing. Everybody is going to start playing. So I do want to remind you, your magazine may look like this when you get the pasted-in schedules. Maybe a little bit of work for you, but it's not much. All you do is go to this blog, which is right on philsteele.com. Here's your Big Ten. They pasted 2 up. So you just print them off. They're in full color for you. Then just snip them out, paste them on your page. You're going to need a glue stick. All right, glue stick is like 99 cents. And then you just paste them in your magazine, and you've got your schedules up to date, complete with the angles on each game that's being played. And this is all free. Just go to philsteele.com. That blog's up right now. And even if you don't buy a magazine, you just want the schedules for the year, go ahead and print them off. Use them. That's about 1/10 of the information we have on each team. But we'll have, as soon as the Pac-12 puts a schedule up, Mountain West puts a schedule up, MAC puts a schedule up, we'll have them up there. So make sure you check out this blog, update it, print them off. And guys, if you're at home and you've been pasting these things up, tweet me out a picture of it. I want to post some pictures up on Phil Steele, or on my Twitter at PhilSteele042, and start showing all these great magazines. It's been a heck of a year. It's an inconvenience, but this whole year's been an inconvenience, hasn't it? Let's get our magazines up to date. Let's get ready for football. But you know what? In December, we're going to be playing 55 games a week. We're going to have every single conference playing in the month of December. So as opposed to having 0 weekly games in December, we're going to have 50-plus games going all 3 weeks of December. Make sure you check that out. And you can update your schedules right there at philsteele.com. Well, there's your 5 plays. That final play, I didn't make it official, but it's Minnesota plus 2.5 over Tennessee. We gave you Central Arkansas minus 10 or 10.5 against Missouri State. Citadel minus 10 against Eastern Kentucky. Southern Miss plus 3.5 over Tulane, and Miami minus 11 over Florida State. And thank you for taking the Phil Steele Plus Tour. I'll be back with you next week with another Phil Steele Plus Tour.